Why, hello there, lovely listeners and viewers. You've come back down the red rabbit hole. We've been expecting you, and the author Jody Cooksley, who we've had with us all week, is glad to see you, aren't you, Jody?
I'm
Not,
delighted to see somebody.
yes, to feel like you're part of the human race again and not just stuck down the red rabbit hole with all the Victoriana that we'd managed to scrape together to intrigue you for the week.
I haven't slept in a week.
No,
And the
no.
lost souls of all the previous writers that have been down there, their research. Nothing happened to them. They just left part of themselves here.
As you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, with us is Lisa Shepherd, as always. And
Hello.
I forgot to introduce myself on the last episode as well. I am NV Peacock. I get so excited about who Lisa's abducted that I just kind of crack on. But yes, I'm NV Peacock, thriller author, also known as Nikki. And yeah, we promised you a Victorian crime off, didn't we?
Oh, we're going straight in.
Yeah.
We're going straight into Victorian Crime Off. Okay.
I feel like we've
I
kept
was
Jody
enjoying
waiting
the
long enough.
gruesomeness.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I wanted
I'm
a
really
bit more
looking forward to this.
gruesomeness. I was liking that. Enjoy a bit of Victorian gruesomeness.
So, do you want to go
Okay.
first, Lise, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, if you want, because well, yours is a bit gruesome, mine's not, isn't it? I think because we've got some inside scoop this week, listeners, on what each other has done. Normally we don't know, but we've got a little bit of insight this week.
We had to just in case we did the same.
Yeah. Oh, then was there not enough Victorian crime out there? There's a fair bit of Victorian crime to choose from. But as I do like to do, if you've been listening for a few weeks, you may have realised I do like to kind of make the connection as much as I possibly can from the crime and to the topic that we're talking about. So this is both Victorian and related to a museum, which was quite hard to do. And I'm sure, Jodie, this is something that you'll know about. So if I say the Benin Bronzes, you know how the British Museum and various other museums came into having the Benin Bronzes. So the Benin Bronzes are beautiful works. They're made of, I think, melted down bronze, but also iron and other things. And they're made by wax casting. So a wax casting is made and they depict the history, spiritual practices, events, all sorts of royal family, all sorts of things from the Benin Empire, which would now be modern day Nigeria. So the Kingdom of Benin, spelled Benin, was a highly organized and powerful state centered around what is now Benin City in Nigeria. And they were known for their art. They were known for the Benin Bronzes. So if anybody has seen them, they are absolutely beautiful. And if you consider they are just made with wax covered with layers of soft like clay, layer and layer and layer and layer of clay, and then the molten metal is poured in and the wax melts away and the image is created. So I'm not sure because I can't remember when I saw them. I didn't pay enough attention to the sign in the British
Mark her
Museum.
down, Jodie. She's not got her facts right. Mark her down.
I
I'm
think
taking
it says
taking notes.
looted on it. I think it says that these were looted on it, but the full story of how they came into the possession is really quite well, it's colonialism at its worst, basically. So so Benin was a really powerful kingdom, and they had a lot of trade. I think one of the big things they were trading in was palm oil. So you can imagine how much that was sought after by other countries, mainly the British. So in January in 1897, a British delegation went and entered into Benin against the, now I'm going to apologise in advance for my pronunciation. This is probably wrong. I'm going off what I heard somebody who sounded really knowledgeable on another podcast say, but the Oba, who is the king of Benin, the chief, of the kingdom. Against the Obba's warnings, they sent in about 9 people, and then also their guides, British. Okay, I've got their names somewhere here, but they sent these in against the Obba's. Obba said, "Don't do that. That's going to be dangerous." They did it anyway because they wanted it to end badly, which it did. So I think about 9 went in, and out of 9, 2 came out. 7 were killed by the Benin people because they weren't supposed to be there. They were warned not to go in and do that and try and make that trade negotiation. But ultimately, the whole thing was set up. You can imagine the papers after about the brutality of the Benin, and then there was a lot of propaganda about them, saying that they were probably cannibals, and that probably what became of them. So it was basically used as a setup to then attack for retaliation for these lives. So then on the 9th of February in 1897, a British force of about 1,200 soldiers, sailors, and African porters began marching towards Benin City, and they sacked everything in their sight. They burned the villages, they displaced the Oba, and they they just took all of these riches, and they knew they were there. They knew exactly what they were after. It's one of the worst acts of colonialism. So they put all the bronze plaques, the Benin bronzes, masks, tusks, all sorts of riches and wonderful things, and they sold them to pay for that expedition, sorry. So they put them into an exhibition to pay for their expedition, to do this, or you can't call it an expedition, can you? But this attack on the people. So they were sold. Some were kept as private trophies, but over time they were sold. I think they ended up in like Germany, New York, various different museums. And I think quite a few have now returned them. They have been over time, they have been returned to Nigeria. There are, I'm trying to find the exact number now. I think there's like 100, it's definitely in the hundreds. It may even be in the 200s. Bronzes still in the British Museum that have not been returned. And there has been this one of the most popular cases for this artwork needs to be returned. It was stolen. I'm sure on one of the plaques in one of the museums it says looted. So it's actively admitting that they were looted and blood was shed. And it was one of the ones I didn't know when I looked it up, that how calculated it was that they sent in that first party, purely thinking, right, we want them to be attacked so that we can have a reason to retaliate, and then we can steal all your stuff. And they have, to this day, they're in the British Museum and they have not been returned to Benin. That's my crime off. So it's crime, it's crime. I was going to say it's not a proper crime, but it is. It's a crime. It's a bloody crime, and it's a calculated crime. It's premeditated. That's mine.
Well, I mean, it is an extraordinary example of just how arrogant that kind of Victorian collector was, and actually that is a core theme of the small museum, which is just trying to sort of get our contemporary heads around a whole collective thinking which thought the entire world was just there to be taken and categorized, and without any thought to that process, or any treating things which were other as less than human. And it's, as I say, it's a core theme of that book, and something which I have really grappled with as a student of Victorian studies. I think it's very Gothic because there's this whole kind of theme of humans as the monster. That's a really clear example in Gothic terms of when people become the monster. That monster comes out of that behavior. So absolutely bang on the money with that kind of theme, and a really devastating story. And yes, I think you're right. I think it does say looted on the wall, which makes you wonder why they still haven't been returned.
Why haven't they given them back? Because there is in Benin City, there's a current Oba who would, they could give them back. There's no, I think they've cited British law in the past as a reason as to why they can't give them back. But it's gone. Germany have given them back. New York have sent some back. So I don't know why we still have them.
No. And I think Ben Ockery has written one of his brilliant essays about this as well.
Yeah,
Well,
it's been wide. It's been very, I didn't know anything about the topic whatsoever. So it's just when I started researching, it was kind of what came up. But it's one of the most talked about um incidents of of that kind of colonialism and how we see that in our museums. And you wouldn't think, you're just going to go, oh, they're really pretty, aren't they? They're lovely
Yeah.
things. And you
Well,
think
it's
that's
kind of
actually
it's
that's yeah.
it's horrific and shameful, and actually to in those human terms, especially museums like the Pitt Rivers had all those kind of shrunken heads and things, and actual actual people on display in museums, which was just, it's mind blowing to think about now. It's actually not that long ago. But also in environmental terms and ecological terms, if you look at even smaller museums like the Booth Museum in Brighton, it's just one person who has just gone out there and gone, oh, these are extraordinary, interesting looking birds. We'll just kill them all and just bring them back, or use them to decorate our hats, or have an enormous display in my house of all these curious things. It's just it is quite mind blowing, the lengths that they went to with those just evil desires. It's a rich source of psychological fiction. And I think that that whole kind of era was really troubled.
Yeah. So Nikki, follow that.
follow that. Well, mine is actually in the Victorian era and is related, but well, related, I say loosely related to my favorite Victorian crime, Jack the Ripper murders. However, I'm not talking about Jack himself. I'm talking about the Thames Torso killings. Have you ever heard of the Thames Torso killings, Jody?
Yes, I have. Is this where there was just bits of people that
Yep.
kept appearing in the yeah.
Yeah, and it was at the same time that Jack the Ripper was killing as well. So while Jack the Ripper was killing his victims, whoever was the torso murderer was doing his. And it felt almost like they were in competition with each other. So it started in 1887 in Raynham, and a torso was found first, which is why obviously they started calling them torso murders. But then more parts of a woman's body was found over the next weeks. The woman herself was never identified, and so she was never given a name. And also, because the body was pulled apart, there was no real way of them telling how she died either. And it went hand in hand with all the other torsos that they found. So between September and October of 1888, which was Jack the Ripper's kind of heyday, there was an arm in Pimplo in Whitehall, and a torso found in Scotland Yard, where they were building the new Scotland Yard. So it was almost like he was like taunting the police. And then there was a leg unearthed nearby as well. Again, the identity of the woman was never found out. And then a third one was found in June 1889. So this is past Jack the Ripper's time. She was identified by her mum, but again, they couldn't tell how she'd actually died. I mean, it had been post-mortem where her limbs and everything had been pulled apart, and the verdict from the coroner was willful murder, whereas the others were just found dead. That's how they put them. And then the most
Is
gruesome.
there a kind of murder that's not willful?
Well, I don't know. It might not be. I suppose. Well, I suppose there's like in degrees, isn't there? It's like second degree murder where you didn't mean to kill someone, but you did. Like you ran them over with your car by accident or something. Well, or your carriage, I guess, back in Victorian times. So in
Actually,
September,
they probably didn't have the verdict of manslaughter then either, did they? Thinking about it.
no. But in September 1889, so this guy was going well beyond Jack the Ripper, because Jack the Ripper was only 1888. So in 1889, the worst one was found. It was the Pinchin Street torso. She still had her arms and was found hanging under a rail arch. And at this point, the police were definitely saying this is not associated with Jack the Ripper, because the differences between the offenders was too pronounced. So they had a very similar, I mean, just to give you a bit of a quick overview as to how they came to that. So the victim types were very similar. They were obviously poor, vulnerable women in and around the area. So Jack the Ripper was killing, they said prostitutes, but as we've now discovered, a lot of them weren't actually prostitutes. They were just women who were down on their luck, and alcoholic or sleeping on the streets. And then cause of death, Jack the Ripper cut them deeply from left to right. And then with the Thames torso killer, no idea, because some of the bits were never discovered. So if you don't have a full body, it's very hard to determine what the cause of death was. One
And
would
some of them had been in the river for a while.
They had, and they weren't exactly great back then with the whole post-mortems anyway. And the
Had to do lots of
mutilations,
research.
yeah, mutilation was obviously a big thing for Jack the Ripper. He was kind of sexually charged when he was doing his murders, and also he was doing them out in display. He had a high risk because his attacks were done in public, in spaces where he could have been discovered quite easily, and at one point was actually discovered when he killed 2 on the same night. Whereas the Thames torso killer killed somewhere else and then left the body somewhere. So he wanted the body bits to be found. However, he wasn't doing, no one discovered anyone killing anyone in public with him. And the kind of the signature of the whole killings were very different. So although some parts were taken perhaps as trophies from both killers, they were different parts. So a lot of the time the head was removed with the torso killings, and sometimes the head wasn't found. So he might have been keeping heads. Whereas Jack the Ripper took sexual organs. They reckoned that the likely offenders had very similar attributes. So they reckoned a male between 25 and 45, physically strong, lower working class. For the Thames torso, that he was a butcher, a knacker, or a dock worker with river access, which makes sense. Whereas with Jack the Ripper, he was possibly unskilled or marginally employed, violent sexual psychopath. But then again, without the whole body, we don't really know much about the torso killer.
I was kind of thinking as you were talking that Jack the Ripper there was some speculation that he was a famous artist, wasn't there? A painter. Walter Sickert?
That was Patricia Cornwell's book, wasn't it?
And that it made perfect sense in that kind of research. And I was just thinking as you were talking that maybe the torso murderer was a sculptor, and maybe those other missing parts are actually inside
the sculptures,
statues, bronzes, sculptures.
Well, there was also a bit of a theory that it could be something to do with kind of, like medical science, because and like students were dumping bits as a kind of joke, or because Jack the Ripper was in the news, they thought they'd do something, but all that seemed a bit too much.
Wasted them. It took
no,
because they were hard. Get hold of those things. They probably wouldn't have wasted them then.
No, but one of the weirdest things, and part of me, again, my kind of author brain grabbed onto this, was that some of the parts were they kind of plotted back, were thrown off by the Shelley estate, so Mary Shelley's house along the river, which then gave a link to Frankenstein. With body parts going missing, someone's creating their own monster, their female monster.
Okay. That's very fascinating, isn't it? Goodness.
Yeah.
And you kind of think actually it could very well have been a commentary on her as a woman, because people were really up in arms when she wrote Frankenstein. They didn't like the fact that book was written by a woman. And you can see that could have been some kind of retaliation. That's fascinating.
Or someone was
trying to. If we got down the rabbit hole for a rabbit hole research interview on Frankenstein, and she told us, well, I did actually create one monster, but didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Maybe go. I got some parts.
Maybe they read the book and was like, I'm going to create a monster, but I'm not going to have a male monster because he seems a bit unruly. So we're gonna get a female one because she'll perhaps be better to keep around, or easier on the eye. I don't know.
Well, you've read going down things. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. But yes, so the Thames torso killer is quite fascinating, and also to have 2 serial killers working at the same time in the same area is quite weird as well. And it just felt like he was vying against Jack the Ripper. And there was a note that was sent to one of the media outlets, although later on it was proposed that it was a reporter himself that actually made the note up from Jack the Ripper saying he was unequivocally not the torso killer. Like it was not his work, and that if he found out that he was killing like proper women, not prostitutes, then he'd go after that killer and sort him out, which I thought was very Dexter of him.
Goodness me. I mean, that sounds to me like a journalist who's putting his own take on that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I reckon
think
a lot that dear boss kind of thing was quite suspicious as well, because that letter turned up at just the right time to create more intrigue in the papers.
Absolutely. And there were less restrictions on your source material than there are now. But it is very interesting, some of the points that you make about class, because they would have all been very keen to prove that those women were fallen women, and therefore somehow it wasn't as important that they died, or that the killers were of lower class. They wanted them to be butchers or dockers rather than actually probably what they were, which was well-to-do people or doctors. They would have, they would have had to have some kind of training in order to be able to butcher people in that way, surely.
The other theory that I came up with whilst going through the details, one of the woman that was actually identified, her name was Elizabeth Jackson. She was actually 8 months pregnant. So it made me wonder if it was some sort of backstreet abortion thing.
Oh, maybe.
That these women were dying and therefore they were just getting cut up and thrown away.
Yeah, possibly. Or they could have, or it could have been very much like the Magdalen laundries, where they would have promised to these women that they would look after the babies that they had, and they would have just killed those babies. And the same would have happened to women who were their families perhaps they would have paid for them to have gone to an asylum, usually because of course they were hysterical because they enjoyed sex outside of marriage. And then they may have been killed rather than, so their parents may have paid a lot of money to have these girls looked after, and those girls may just have been killed because nobody would ever have gone back to check on them.
No,
and it was be a Victorian woman.
I know, you didn't stand much of a chance, really, did you?
No,
you
absolutely
didn't.
Not. And those are the kind of the central themes of my book about the Surgeon's house. And it was incredibly difficult for them to do anything. They were kind of damned if they did and damned if they didn't.
There was some interesting graffiti next to one of the torsos as well that is spoken about, but I didn't really get much from it, and I didn't think it could have been anything. It could have been someone completely different that it was referring to. It's like Lisbeth or something, it said. I don't see why that would appear for one and not all of them. These kind of killers tend to want to do the same thing over and over again. But yeah, it was it's like Jack the Ripper. It's never going to be solved, is it? Let's be honest, not now.
Well, I love that. I love the kind of retrospective research that you can do into that. And as a thriller writer, you must have found it absolutely fascinating, the idea that there were these two serial killers that were playing kind of cat and mouse with each other, if you like, literally like cat and mouse, because that's what my cats do. They leave my body parts around the place for me to find.
Well, it certainly isn't new. I think it was the 70s, there was Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and the Green River Killer that were all around at the same time. And Ted Bundy had been caught, and he actually asked for a stay of execution that he'd find the Green River Killer. So he did a kind of Hannibal Lecter and profiled the Green River Killer for the police.
Did it work? Did he help?
Not really, but and they executed him anyway, so he didn't really get much of an extra of anything. But BTK was around the same time, and he'd retired his killings to have his family because he had his kids. And he actually, I know, as you do, stop your killing when you didn't you, Lisa? You stopped your killing when you had your kids.
It's just not.
But you didn't stop kidnapping.
Really. No, I didn't stop kidnapping. It's just the time. When you got kids, they just suck out time out of your life. You haven't got time to plan and carry out a murder. You're too busy. I think this is why there's more male killers.
Probably.
Because we don't have time.
Well,
or maybe women are just
better at it. We just don't.
Maybe we don't get caught.
Yeah,
well, BTK got caught because of all the media hype, because he was getting really annoyed that the Green River Killer was on the papers all the time. And so he sent a letter to the police basically saying to them, if I send you a floppy disk, will you be able to tell where it's come from? Tell me honestly. And they went, no, of course we won't be able to tell you. And so he sent a floppy disk that was from his church. So they've tracked it to the church and tracked him down and caught him. I keep
I mean,
disappearing.
sooner or later, they do always say that sooner, you'll know a lot more about this than I do, but that they do say that sooner or later they're always caught, because with a serial killer, it's always about power. It's always about
Yeah.
the power over the victims. Whereas I think female killers, if you look at, kind of past female killers, there's a lot of poisoners. It's all a little bit more surreptitious. It's not necessarily wanting to be found out.
I
It's
think
not wanting the kind of power and the glory of it.
women, for me, don't want to kill per se. They're not wanting the joy of the kill. They want the end of whatever it is. So they want the money or they want the freedom or whatever that kill can bring them. Whereas men tend to kill for the pleasure of it. But in my book, The Brother, the serial killer there says, I'm the perfect serial killer, but no one's ever going to know unless I'm caught. Like he's really torn over this kind of, to be the perfect killer, no one should know. He shouldn't get caught. But then he's like, well, no one will ever know if I don't get caught. So he gets a little bit deliberately, almost like lapsadaisy with what he's doing.
It's a bit like being really good at your job, but getting nothing back from the boss. Like no one's going, good job, well done. Nice little pat on the shoulder for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Little pat on the back, well done. So they have to, who are they going to get that recognition from?
Or like being
public.
a female novelist years ago, when you got absolutely no recognition for that, because who could possibly write a book about a female?
Yeah. Poor old Mary Shelley again. We've gone full circle back to her.
Full circle.
But yeah, it did make me think, because there was, that there was bits of women sort of washing up all over the place, that it was a kind of Frankenstein's monster situation that someone was doing, maybe. But who knows? Really... So Jody, which one inspires you the most?
God, that is so difficult.
I know, because they're very different.
Really different. They're really different. And I think that the Benin story, Lisa's story, I think it was a fantastic example of just the horrific crimes that were right out there in the open, that nobody ever called crimes in the Victorian period. So I love that, because that's a massive central feature of the small museum. And that. But it doesn't inspire me to write a novel about it, because I think that other people have said that better, and I think there have been a lot of and I wouldn't write that either, because I think that ought to be written by a Nigerian novelist.
That's true.
So what would inspire me the most would be these missing pieces of people, because I love the idea that they were these two. I hadn't heard that they were, I'd heard of them both, but I hadn't really kind of put them together before. And so I think, that's much more my kind of theme in terms of grisly Victorian crime. So for me, that would definitely inspire me the most. The Torso Murder.
Yay! And just as I say it, I'm like disappearing into the background because it's gotten dark here, and I forgot to put a light on.
I'm out. I'm done.
I know.
My work here is done.
Gone.
It's very true. And actually, as I was talking through, Jodie, and when you talked after my story, I thought, you've kind of already taken those themes and worked with those themes, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's a different story to be told. But it fascinated me that it's not being called out as a crime, and that it is so under the radar. It's not Jack the Ripper. It's not, a typical kind of true crime, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, and a mass murder as well, an absolutely devastating mass murder.
I think you've got the difference there with the media in terms of like how they treat the government and what the government does compared to what happens with the individuals. So the Jack the Ripper murders, there was a good story behind it for the media in terms of, be a good woman. Because if you're not a good, honest woman, then Jack the Ripper's going to get you. Whereas with this, it's, and they did that again with the Yorkshire Ripper, didn't they? He only killed certain women, so as long as you weren't that kind of woman, you were fine, which was, as we know now,
recent one in Ipswich.
Crap. Yeah.
Mm.
Is it the Suffolk Strangler?
Yeah.
Did they catch him? I don't know.
Yes, I'm sure they did.
But that's always the case, isn't it? When women are told to not go out after dark and not to wear certain things and so on. It's that these things are often, I think, still in the media. There's very little difference between the way in which they're reported now and the way that they were reported in Victorian times. It's still used as that narrative.
And at the end of the day, no serial killer is going to stop me running around naked at night. So
after what we just heard, though, and after the things that you write, I'm not sure anyone's going to be chasing after you. I've got a really nice mechanical implement that you can take with you on your walks that will chase people off.
I'm wondering what that is now. Right,
I'm feeling very lucky that I managed to abduct Jody this time round, and I'm not sure I'm coming in again. If she wants to come back on, it's got to be done willingly. All right. I'm scared.
They mostly come back willingly, Jody. There's a bit of Stockholm syndrome with the rabbit hole, so
yeah, that's fine. I'm not sure you're going to get me out of here, actually. If you keep talking to me about all these interesting things, I may not leave the sack.
Well, we are going to have to leave it there because I'm disappearing almost altogether with the darkness.
You are.
I know. I forgot that the night draws in quicker now because it's autumn.
Yes.
Yeah, we're into autumn now, aren't we? So, well, thank you.
There. It's the best season.
It is the best season.
It is.
Like I said, the run up to Halloween is like the inside of my mind. So I love the kind of the colours, the smells, the kind of everybody, thinking more Gothic and thinking more horror, and it's.
Well, our listeners and our viewers should be enjoying it right now.
They should be. The 31 days of Halloween should be well underway.
Enjoying our 31 days of Halloween. So check out daily videos on our YouTube channel, on our TikTok, and on all our social medias. So wherever you get your social media, follow the Red Rabbit.
And hopefully there'll be something there, because if I'm reliant on a lot of authors here sending me stuff.
Oh,
I didn't want to make too much of a big
it will just be lots of videos of me lip syncing various things.
Or me telling ghost stories.
And you telling ghost stories, yeah. It'll be a lot
Public
of us,
domain
which is
stuff.
definitely not as good as Cell. So
no, probably not. We've got some stuff coming. So, and Jody's obviously provided us with something. So
very good.
Fingers crossed, there'll be many a tale from many a different author to keep you all happy and busy throughout Halloween, with daily uploads through October. So do remember to subscribe if you're listening now. It makes a big difference to us and it costs you nothing to do it. And follow the Red Rabbit on all the social media to build up our following and let people know about our weirdness and our mad ramblings, and of course our wonderful author guests. And Jody's going to provide us with some links for her books. So if you want to buy The Small Museum or Surgeon's House, lovely, pretty hardback book, then by all means you go on right ahead and you encourage Jody in her crazy Victorian mechanical collection.
Yeah, I need him.
Yeah, she needs money, so she needs money for this.
I need the money. They're not cheap. Vintage surgical tools are not cheap.
I bet they're not. And you would
see
hope
your eBay basket, Jody.
I'm sure you can claim them back through tax, though, as kind of research, surely.
That is happening. That is such a good idea. That's happening.
Yeah, I would. Research purposes, definitely. And that trip to, Hawaii, definitely research purposes for some reason.
Yeah, I do seem to remember there were some really gruesome stories about Hawaii.
Yeah, the volcanoes and Pele, the volcano goddess. Yeah, definitely. Right, well, thank you, viewers and listeners, once again, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.